Views and opinions expressed within the following program are solely those of the individual. These views and opinions do not necessarily represent those of Shaw TV.
Hey Calgary, thanks for joining us. I'm Kevin Chorney. Today's October 25th, and this is Calgary Now. Across Canada, crime is going down. According to Statistics Canada, the decline has been happening for years now. But a closer look at the statistics reveal that when it comes to robberies, commercial ones have gone down, but have risen in residences and in outdoor public locations, like parking lots or public transit facilities. While stats are all well and good, what does that mean for those who are still victims of crime? When it comes to stolen property, it's very easy to report the crime using the Calgary Police Service's online form. But after that, what's next? The likelihood of your property being recovered is slim, and the arrest of the perpetrator even more so. Now I gotta level with you, I can't stand criminals, especially thieves. I don't think many of us can, but I loathe them. For me, like most of you, nothing comes easy, and when my property is stolen, I'm seeing red in no time. But if we don't report the crime, how can we expect to get results? A police commission survey shows that while overall crime is down, 42% of victims don't report the crime to begin with. It sounds bonkers, right? So what gives? Tonight, I'm looking for answers to that and other crime-related queries. We're talking crime in Calgary, and I've got some great guests to do just that with me tonight. We're taking your calls as usual, live on air, so don't be a stranger. You can get us at 403-539-6710. We're also monitoring our Facebook and Twitter feed, so check us out online as well. Stay right there.
My take on kind of the Calgary Police and the crime rates is that I feel like a lot of people kind of have the mentality that if they're reporting what's going on with them, or if they are involved in some sort of, the victim of a petty crime, that police don't really take it seriously. Typically, I'm a supporter of the police force, and I think that they do a fine job, but I think more so in the past year, I've actually kind of witnessed people feeling like the police weren't quite following through with things that are maybe lesser of a concern. So I guess I kind of wonder if the police maybe just have larger things to deal with, but it does seem like maybe some of the smaller crimes aren't being followed through with as much as they could be possibly.
Welcome back. Joining me is Deputy Chief Trevor Daru from the Calgary Police Service and Barbara Prayette from the Federation of Calgary Communities. Guys, thanks very much for taking time out of your, I'm sure, busy schedules to be with me tonight.
Thanks,
Barbara, tell us a bit about the Calgary Federation of Communities.
The Federation of Calgary Communities is a not-for-profit organization that provides support to and is part of a movement of over 20,000 volunteers through our network of community associations and other not-for-profits.
20,000 in Calgary alone?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, associated with the community associations. So with the Federation, we do have, we provide service in the area of financial services. We do have urban planners on our staff. We provide governance and whatever service we can for the running of the community associations, but we also have specifically for this show, we have a Building Safe Communities program where we work with community associations to... I
want to hear more about that in depth. I'll let you get to that in just a moment here. Deputy Chief, what are your responsibilities with the Calgary Police Service?
Well, I have the Bureau of Community Policing, so that's all the uniformed patrol officers that you see out in the streets. Various district offices, and then a traffic section, as well as our air services and tactical unit and K9, and our community and youth section, which is a lot of our prevention education programs.
So I don't know how we got you here today. That's incredible. Well, obviously, very busy guy. Thanks again for being here. Now, I wanted to tell a brief story. I play beer league hockey. During the summer, we're playing at the Don Hartman Sportsplex. Great facility. It's a good game. I think we won the game, which was nice. Afterwards, we get back to the locker room, and unfortunately, all of our valuables, our property, had been stolen. Whether or not it was the door that was unlocked, a break-in, again, not quite clear. Now, there was surveillance footage of the gentleman, as it turned out, who took the property. We called the CPS right afterwards in the parking lot, and we were told about, a 6-hour response time. In fairness, maybe 4 to 6 hours. Now, this is already 10 p.m. on a Tuesday night. We've got to work in the morning. We're regular Joes. There's no way that's going to work for us. It was suggested to file online. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't file. And as it turns out, according to this Calgary Police Commission survey, I'm not the only one. I mean, 42% of respondents apparently are not filing crimes, not reporting crime. And I think it's a fascinating number. It's a big number. I'm curious, why do we think that is?
Well, first of all, let me say we want people to report crime, regardless of how trivial they think it may be or how busy they think they may be. And we hear that quite often, you're too busy to respond to this.
Sure.
We want you to report it. The fact that it makes me think of a couple things. I've been playing hockey since I was little as well, and I know this has been a problem for a number of years. And there's a lot of things we need to do. We need to work with the community to say, hey, how do we prevent this from happening? You know, and they say lock those doors in the dressing rooms. They say keep your
maybe in the car
your stuff out of there.
Or don't bring
it home or don't bring it there if you don't need it. So there's some preventative aspects that we'd like people to take as well. You know, with respect to the delay and 4 to 6 hours, absolutely. We would like to be there in 5 minutes. The reality is we have to prioritize calls. And a busy night, chances are, most of the nights they are very busy, and we're not going to be there in the 6 minutes or 5 minutes for something like that. We prioritize them based on a number of different factors. Crime in progress, is someone being injured, do we need to get there right away? So those are the things we're going to right now, and the other things are later on. So we have things like the online reporting, and really important, if people, we try to make it as easy as we can for them. Show up in an office the next day, one of the district offices, they'll take your report. Call the next day, you can walk in, you know, they can take it over the phone for the most part. So we're asking people, call in those crimes.
And be realistic. It sounds like people need to be more realistic, you know, today than they were in the past. I mean, we're a big city, chances are no one's coming by to dust for fingerprints. Right. And it's an unrealistic point of view.
And a single incident may seem like little. If we're seeing this happen a lot in every single rink and every single, if we could start patterning this. Well, now that's something we're going to put more resources after. So it is important that it is reported.
What about the fact that there was the picture of this gentleman as well? I mean, how far does the picture go, really?
That's a good thing to have as well, because it may not help us on that one. Maybe if there's enough to identify him, perfect, we're on him. And we will go after that. If not, maybe the next one puts something together. Maybe someone recognizes them. We run it on our Crime Stoppers program, and someone says, geez, I remember that jacket, kind of a distinct jacket, or distinct running shoes, maybe a hat that he was wearing, or something that's going to identify him. Someone calls in Crime Stoppers, now we've got the guy.
Now, see, that's interesting. You touched on Crime Stoppers. Do the CPS and your group, Barbara, Building Safer Communities Calgary, do you work with the CPS for the Crime Stoppers movement? As far as getting that word out?
Not Crime Stoppers in particular. We do recommend it to communities, but we work very closely with the community liaison officers and the crime prevention unit. The community liaison officers work directly with the communities, and they support them every way they can. They give them information and stats. They provide literature to them. They're just generally a really good support, and it's been amazing. The program's only been going for a year, and the support that we've had with the police service, especially the crime prevention unit, they review pamphlets that we want to do. We've created resources. The My Neighbor card came from the partnership with the police service. So, and the big thing too is people aren't reporting, and that comes up in the our sessions with the communities, and it's always a report, and we show them how to do that. And the reasoning behind it, because like you were saying, with the trends and stuff, if they don't know that there's an issue in the community, they can't deploy their staff.
I want to talk a little bit about those trends in just a sec here. We're going to take a quick break, folks. We'll be right back in a minute. If you've been a victim of crime and not reported it, why don't you give us a call and let us know why you didn't. We'll talk to you soon.
I think the Calgary Police do a fairly decent job when it comes to the traffic violations in this city, although sometimes I do think they should concentrate on the vagrancy population a little bit more, because that really annoys me when all I'm trying to do is drive around or walk around downtown Calgary, and all I get is people coming up to me every 38 seconds saying, do you have any money, do you have any spare change? But what do you exactly do? You can't give a homeless person a ticket because they don't have any money to pay it. I do think there needs to be a new strategy on that particular subject.
I guess on the topic of our crime rates going down, or maybe it's just not being reported as often, I was reading kind of a study or a survey saying that out of 1,000 people, there was 12% that have become victims of a crime they reported within the past year. Out of that, only 58% of people are reporting it because they feel like police just aren't going to take it seriously. So I guess kind of with that said, it's sort of grounds to say, you know, is there less crime, or are people just kind of saying, you know, I give up, because whether they hear that maybe something happened to a friend and it's not being taken seriously, or they just feel that they don't believe in their police force any longer, it seems like a lot of people aren't reporting what's going on.
Hey Calgary, welcome back. Tonight we're discussing crime in Calgary with an emphasis mainly on theft. Now, Deputy Chief, which crime did the study show is going unreported the most?
Well, it's things like car prowlings. As sad as it sounds, a lot of the crimes where people aren't putting in an insurance claim are going unreported. So when they have to put in an insurance claim, they will report it because the insurance company demands that they do that. So, you know, Calgary is a very safe city. We know that, but it's a responsibility of a number of people. It's a responsibility of the citizens as well. We've got groups like Barb's that help work together to make Calgary a better place.
And how do communities work together to, say, combat car prowlings?
Well, there's a lot of different distribution of information. There are newsletters that go out to their communities. Whenever they have events in their community, they can pass out information about it. They can get information from their community liaison officer again. Any of the publications that the police have, any of the publications that we have, it gets disseminated. Wherever and whenever they can.
Okay, so from your members then, what's the main crime that people are reporting, or where's the onus of the effort? Where's the effort going as far as the crime's concerned?
For reporting?
Well, I mean, which one are they observing the most? The top of the list, I suppose.
I think it depends by the community.
Is that right? Yeah, that
some of it is the vagrancy, some of it is groups of youth walking around the community. Not that they're getting into trouble, it just there's the perception that maybe it's not as safe to walk on the street if there's groups of kids. Mm-hmm. It really comes down to which community you're in and what they deem important.
Seems fair. Seems fair. Sure, sure. Hopefully it's not violent crime anywhere. I don't know necessarily if that's really the case in Calgary, you know, the way it used to be. Apparently crime's down. It's a 39-year low nationally, I should say. Now, StatsCan had a survey, released the findings. Apparently, crime's down 6%, which is a record-setting low as well. The lowest it's been since 1972. Calgary posting numbers actually even lower than that at 9%, which sounds amazing. But again, if people aren't reporting crime, how accurate are those numbers?
Well, and I think that you have to realize that stats are only one part of it. And when we're looking at how are we responding to community issues, community problems, things like, you know, the homeless population, things like traffic issues, there's things that we don't just rely on stats because of that. Unreported crime is a big concern of ours. Mm-hmm. And Barb talked about perception of safety. How safe does the public feel? How safe do they feel when they're walking down the street? Mm-hmm. That may not be recorded in the stats, so that's a way that we need to be deploying our resources as well.
I mean, I'm 6'2", I'm 200 pounds. I feel pretty safe anywhere in the city, I think. What about, well, Barbara, how about yourself?
I feel safe in most parts of the city too. Like, Calgary is a very safe city.
And I think we're getting safer. I mean, that seems to be the perception. A lot of people want to be here. I don't think it's always for the employment opportunities. I think a lot of people do want to be in a safe environment.
Well, it's interesting how that's linked together, right?
Yeah.
People don't necessarily just choose jobs; they choose places to live, to raise a family. So safety is very important. And you know, and a credit to having such a safe city doesn't just go to police. It goes to community organizations. It goes to people that are willing to give so much of their time, so many volunteers. That, in my opinion, is what makes Calgary different. People are willing to step up. They're willing to get involved in the community to make it a better place.
It is, though. It's a group effort, isn't
Absolutely.
it, Barbara?
It is. One of the biggest things that comes out of our meetings that we have with communities is that they want to get to know their neighbors. They don't know them as well as they should or they want to. They don't necessarily know whose kids belong to who or who's supposed to be in the neighborhood.
It's interesting you bring that up. I think that's a fundamental issue in our city. As we grow, and as any city grows, we kind of want to protect our own little bubble of space. And in doing so, I think a lot of the time people will alienate themselves from their neighbors. And it's a risky endeavor. Without camaraderie amongst neighbors, you don't really have a true strong neighborhood. And how can you ever hope to build a sense of community? Now, with that in mind, what programs specifically, Calgary Police Service and building safer communities in mind, what specific programs are aimed at doing just that, at knocking down these barriers, bursting these bubbles where people can once again build, you know, a strong community?
Well, the Building Safe Community is a pilot right now, and it was piloted in
Which communities? Yeah, go ahead.
The first 3 that were launched in January: Ross Carrick, Southwood, and Crescent Heights. And in September we launched 4 more, which are Hidden Valley, Chaparral, Riverbend, and Scenic Acres.
Oh, across.
And what came out of that was people wanting to know each other, so we developed, in partnership with the crime prevention unit at the police service, My Neighbor card. So on the one side, it asks you questions. If something was suspicious in your neighbor behind you, would you know the address or the contact information for that person? And on the other side, it gives you a space for 8 addresses and phone numbers and names of your neighbors. So it's both you knowing who your neighbor is, and it's also a conversation starter.
It's a great tool for just that.
Yeah.
You know, it's an
very
icebreaker.
simple.
So how responsive were people?
We went through, I printed just about 12,000. We got rid of about 10,000 in 6 weeks.
Wow.
So between the police service and our communities, we're going for another print. And hopefully we're looking at printing it in various languages.
So is there
as well.
any numbers come back as to results as to how that's helped maybe hamper crime?
Well, and it's always measuring prevention, right? It's always difficult to know what was the impact with that actual tool, but that's a part of it. I mean, that's why it's so important, and it's a great example of how do you engage the community, how do you get the community involved. Just like you said, not only is it a safer place, it's a nicer place to be when your kids can go outside and play and someone else is watching.
Oh, it's everyone's right,
like we always, as we grew up.
What about social media? How was social media utilized to help the process?
Well, Southwood had an issue with the green space outside of the Anderson LRT station, and they wanted to take that park back. And so I know they've been on Twitter and stuff with things, but it was like all the stars aligned with parks and recreation. The police service had just done a safety study on the park, and they took back the park this summer. And what they did was they removed fences with the help of parks, improved the lighting and increased the amount of lighting, moved things around, cleaned it up. They did an art project.
A lot of common sense,
They did an art project on the bus barn with 27, 28 headshots of community members. The stats for January to end of July 2011 compared to 2012, stats are down for crime by 30%.
That's fantastic. That's a job well done.
Yeah,
no, that is
the
amazing.
Drug deals are, well, they've gone somewhere, but they're not in the park anymore, and people are actually using the park.
That's
just
great.
one
Good
of
for you guys.
one of the 18 initiatives. So
I'm told we have a caller on the line. Oh, sorry, we'll give it a sec. They're just ironing out the details. Oh, there you are. Hello.
Hi, I'm enjoying the show tonight.
I'm sorry.
I've got a question.
Sure, what's your name?
I've got a question for Deputy Chief Trevor.
Yep.
All right, not a problem.
I'm wondering what crimes would be top priority in the city.
Well, when we do a survey, the Calgary Police Commission does a survey every year, and the top crimes right now are home break-ins, residential break-ins, which is interesting because stats would tell you they're down, but yet that's the number one that concerns people, and I get why they would. That's a personal invasion, absolutely. Yeah. Traffic, believe it or not, traffic is always a concern, and that is something that year after year we change different, what's the top 5, but traffic's always within the top 5, so it remains there. Drugs and gangs is another one that continues to be a concern of the public. Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's actually
good question. Thanks.
It is a good question. Thanks so much for the call.
Now, thank you very much.
Now, with that in mind, what percentage-wise, ballpark, guys writing traffic tickets versus detective work, how are the forces allocated?
Well, what we have is we have a traffic section, and their primary responsibility is to investigate injury accidents, serious injury accidents, fatalities, unfortunately, and they also do traffic enforcement, but they also deploy on what we call a crime management strategy. So that's where the community calls in, or the aldermen or the community leaders, and say, you know, we've got a roadway here that is a real problem. Or we had one in the south where it was a school principal said, we've got people doing illegal U-turns, but that wasn't his concern as much as the kids that were crossing the road. And so we deploy according to that. So the traffic section, that's their primary focus, although every officer, of course, can enforce the Traffic Safety Act. So they can all do it, but the priority of traffic safety falls within our traffic unit.
All right, fair enough. Violent crime, how does that work? I mean, is there a task force? You'll have to forgive me, I'm a bit of a layman, clearly.
No.
Or is it just, you know, people are out and about, officers are out and about and waiting for dispatch? Is their primary focus at that time, though, is it traffic violation? at the time.
When they're, okay, so what happens is we get our calls through
Right.
the Public Safety Communications section, the PSC.
Of course.
So if you call 911, it goes to another city section,
Yep.
which then deploys, it's prioritized, the call's prioritized,
Yep.
and then it's dispatched to the units on the street. So the units are responding to calls. Busy nights generally, Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights,
Yep.
sometimes Sundays, they're just essentially going call to call to call. We also
Flat
have
out.
other units though, however, that we have a gang suppression team. Their focus, so you talk about the violence, their focus is on the gangsters and the bars
Yeah.
and bar safety, and working very closely with the bars, the bar ownership as well, and the bar associations who work with them in trying to keep the gangsters out of the bars and let the bars be a great
Yeah, and
place
that's,
for people to be.
you're making a lot of headway there.
Yeah.
Because I remember, growing up a little bit younger, there was the stories, and at times you'd even fall witness to some of the violence at bars.
Yeah.
And it's getting a lot better. Mind you, maybe I'm getting a little bit older, but I think it is getting better. I wanted to touch a little bit on the online reporting.
Yep.
So Citizens Online Report. Now our producer, Selena, she had her bike stolen.
Right.
She made sure to document it pretty well. She wrote a great piece
Right.
that was in the blog section of the Calgary Herald. I think you're familiar with the case number.
Yeah.
She did report that. How, I guess, what's the process on the Calgary Police Service, and after receiving that report, what happens behind the scenes?
Well, after a report like that, it'll go onto the system, and so we know that certain property gets pawned or it's sold through the various electronic sites on the computers. So. And over the internet. So
That's how it works.
our members, we have stolen property people that will look at some of these things. So the report will come to an investigator who'll take that report and start looking. Unfortunately, a lot of the property isn't identifiable. That bike was different, so it made it easier to identify that. And
It was a unique bike, right?
yeah, we seize a lot of property that we don't know who the owners are, and we were talking about it in our office. We always say, know the serial numbers of your bikes, know the serial numbers of your computer equipment. How many people really do? So can we identify it when we find it? So that investigator, they will be looking at pawn shops have certain things that they have to do. They have to take a picture of it.
Yeah.
It has to go onto a database that we search. It has to be held for 30 days. A picture of the person who, identification for the person who pawned
is that
it.
right?
Yeah,
That's
so
great.
there's channels that we can follow through. There's certain places that that property gets fenced
See,
or sold.
Of course, with the advent and the way that technology is progressing, bit of a headache, I would think, as far as trying to recover stolen property online, like sites like eBay, Kijiji.
There are.
I mean, how do you really do that
that
stuff?
becomes very difficult. So I mean, there was a time when it was almost predominantly the pawn shops that we would go and see. Well, now, as you know, just like you said, there's so many different sites people can sell them. So it is much more difficult. But even more important that people record those
Serial numbers. Yeah, I would take a little responsibility for your
exactly.
items. I don't do that, but I think I will. Yeah, that's a
you
good
know
point.
what? It's an important thing to do. It doesn't take much time.
No.
You know how many TVs do you have in your house? You can record that in minutes.
Absolutely.
Then when we find this property, we know that there's an owner and we can trace it back. And we do. In cases that people do that, we return the property.
Yeah,
and
that's
that's
great. Make their day. I want to switch gears a little bit here. Talk a bit about drugs. Now, last year, or I guess earlier this year, there was a big PMMA scare amongst ecstasy users. And unfortunately, it's still the youth of our city. It is a sad reality, but it's just that, it's reality. Now, how do we combat that on the community level? What efforts are being made?
Well, I know my son goes to high school, and he received all kinds of information through the resource officer at his school. But we also put stuff into the community newsletters, and that gets out to all the community members. So we send we have a newsletter ourselves that goes out, and then we send information out to the newsletter editors as well. So it gets out there.
And enforcement is only one side of the drug equation, and we do enforcement. We have covert operators, undercover operators, we have surveillance, we have all kinds of things that will go after those drug dealers, those organized crime dealers. But the other side, and probably the more important side, is that prevention side. How about the education to the kids through the SROs, but even younger? And these are partnerships we have with social services, where we have a police officer working, it's called a MASS program, multi-agency school support team. And so a police officer working with a social worker, going to teaching kids that are, teaching them about drugs and about the harms of drugs. If we can prevent that in the first place, we have another program called SFAR, S4, Start Smart, Stay Safe,
Yep.
where it's a progressive education to kids.
The key is prevention. The key
it
is
really
education.
is.
Nothing's
That is the
changing
answer
there.
to this.
We just got to keep at it.
Yeah,
Keep at it.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Folks, our half hour is nearly up, if you can believe it. After this, we're going to take we're going to take a quick break right now, and we'll wrap it up with our always fun, always entertaining random question. Stay with us.
My perspective on policing in the city is whether or not crime rates have decreased or risen is more related to the police officers themselves being motivated to improve things and help and make their correct arrests, but being hampered by the reality of who commits crimes and how often they commit crimes, and the fact of people who are involved in crimes repeatedly committing the same crimes over and over and basically getting there by their own volition. I think police officers may wish they could do more, but sometimes they're powerless to change the behavior of people who have a propensity to live a little bit off the rails.
All right, time for the random question wrap. Now, I have no idea what's on these cards. Bear with me if they're a little silly, a little ridiculous. Barbara, I'll let you pick one there if you would. Thank you. You want to hand it back to me?
You were going to ask it, weren't you?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. When do you think the NHL will ever start, if ever? Is the NHL going to start? Are we going to have a season? What do you think?
I'm sorry. I am disappointed. I wish it would. Just like everyone else, it's really a part of Canada. It's such a tradition for us, and I don't think we're going to see a game this year.
I think that's the hard reality.
Yeah.
I tend to agree. Greed versus greed. No middle ground. What do you do? Barbara, I can tell you're a huge hockey fan, right?
Yeah, huge.
Are you really?
No, I'm not. Sorry.
No opinion? What do you think? 50-50?
I would hope that it is, because I know there's a lot of people out there that have been clamoring for something to do on whatever night it is that
Trying
it's
to stay
on.
out of trouble.
Stay out of trouble, and they're trying to find other things to do. So I hope it comes back. It's good for the
We'll put
city.
you down for a yes.
Yes.
Two nays, one yay. Folks, thanks very much for joining us. Hopefully we've shed a little bit of light on what is indeed a bunch of what I think are important issues. As always, we want to hear from you. We welcome you to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Join us next week when we discuss the decline of independent theaters and rental stores in Calgary. Good night.